Morning. I'm Nikki Lunsford with the Middletown Church Study Project. This is April 19th, 2017, and we are fortunate and honored to be sitting in the Union Chapel Ministries sanctuary. They have many options for us to use this morning, but this is the central, the hub. And in front of me sits Reverend Gregg Parris, who's a longtime friend and the senior pastor of Union Chapel. And Gregg, if I say anything that's not quite right, make sure you correct me, because we want this to be historically correct.
Sure.
All right, so thank you so much for being here this morning and recording what Union Chapel does, because it has its fingers in so many parts of the community. And you've been at this a long time here at Union Chapel, right? How many years has it been?
Yeah, I'm in my 37th year.
Amazing.
Here as the pastor at Union Chapel.
And that's hard when you're only 39, right?
Well, I was very young. I was merely a child at the time. That's exactly right. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, it was unusual, but I was very mature for my age.
All right.
Yeah.
So tell us about your faith journey. Your faith journey.
Mm-hmm.
What led you here? We'll get into here later, but what
Yeah.
led you here from a little one?
Yeah, I grew up in a family that valued participation in a local church, and so I grew up in a small church in a small town here in Indiana. But I came to a meaningful faith in Christ. I became a Christ follower when I was 16 years old. It was in the context of a special weekend event that our church was hosting, and I heard the gospel of Jesus Christ for the first time in a way that seemed compelling to me. Mm-hmm. And so I made a decision then to surrender my life to Christ, and it's the best decision I've ever made.
I love that. How did you then come here? What was your process from that time to here?
Well, attended a university here in the state of Indiana, Valparaiso, and got to college because of athletics. My family wasn't a family that valued higher education. They were blue collar and are blue collar, and so we didn't have a tradition of higher education in our family. So athletics was really my ticket to the university, and then from the university I went on to graduate school in the seminary, Asbury Theological Seminary. Got married and became ordained with the United Methodist Denomination, and it's the denomination then that assigns people to places. And so I was appointed here to the Muncie District Union Chapel Church in 1981. Been here ever since.
So this was your first appointment.
Yeah, it's a little unusual, especially in our connectional system as United
Right.
Methodist. Pastors tend to move around a handful of times through their career. So it's exceptionally unusual to be here over 30 years. And I suppose it's just the nature of the ministry that we've developed here that made our situation unique and has been the explanation for our tenure and longevity. Yeah, it's been great fun.
Well, if I remember right, this sanctuary actually was a Ford car dealership. But where were you before that? What was the church like when you came here in 81?
Well, the first appointment was a two-point circuit, which means that there were two local churches that one pastor serves. And the reason for that was economics. The congregations were so small that they had to band together in order to afford a pastor.
Sure.
So I would preach in one church and then jump in my car and drive 5 miles to the other church. They were both rural, out in the middle of nowhere, out in the east central part of the county, and I'd preach in the other church. And the second of those two, Union Chapel, started to develop a pulse and began to percolate a little bit, and we began to see some growth. And as a result of that, our little country church wasn't able to hold the growth that we were experiencing, so we relocated to a local high school, Delta High School, and met in the high school for 4.5 years. And the congregation continued to develop. And eventually we purchased this facility where our campus is today, It was a vacated, used car lot. Our sanctuary where we're sitting today was the showroom of a Ford car dealership.
Mm-hmm.
And our offices and classrooms were part of the service bays and parts department of the Ford dealership. But it came with a big square footage, lots
Right.
of superstructure and roof. The paved lighted parking lot was already in place, so there were a lot of advantages
Mm-hmm.
to inheriting this property. And so we made it up as we went along, trying to figure out how the spaces would work. And today we've added on to the campus, and not just in buildings, but in acreage. And we have about 100,000 square feet of buildings and over 40 acres of property in this
Mhm.
location now, so it serves us very well.
I think do you still have the community garden?
We do have a community garden out in our field, our cornfield. We have a
Mhm.
cornfield and a community garden, so that's a great blessing to many people and groups within the city and even the local neighborhood. We invite people to come and take whatever they would like to have, and so it's a great service. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
great thing.
Mm-hmm. Good use of property. What do you see as your main responsibilities here at Union Chapel?
Well, as you can imagine, starting in a little cornfield church, your responsibilities are very much related to all the needs in the church. So it was everything from type the bulletin to preach the sermon and turn on the heat when you got to the building. When you just have 40 or 50 people in a little cornfield church, the pastor has to juggle a lot of the balls. As time has passed over the years, my role has changed. And today I'm more of a CEO kind of position in the organization. So I'm responsible for primary leadership. I'm the primary visionary for the organization. And I also then manage a team of other leaders, and so I equip leaders to engage their responsibilities. I'm still the primary preacher, teacher, and responsible in a fiduciary way with all the budgets and that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
fundraising, and so those are the key components. I lead, I train other leaders, I'm the visionary. I make sure the organization moves forward, has what it needs, and it's more of a executive oversight kind of a position.
Mm-hmm. How do you see your church, but characterize the condition of the church? Thriving, growing, struggling, declining?
We are, in those categories, we're thriving.
Mm-hmm.
We're very healthy in every measurable category. I know in the context of this study that Muncie has been perceived as a typical town in the United States, a middle town, if you will, and we've had dramatic changes over the last 40 or 50 years in our community. Socioeconomic change has been rather dramatic, and I'm sure that everyone's aware of how challenging those things have been to us.
Mm-hmm.
So Union Chapel is a unique story in the context of the general course and path of the community. We started out 12 miles from town in a little cornfield church, and today we're more of a regional church reaching many people. It's interesting to note that in the history of Muncie, no local congregation has ever worshiped 1,000 people per week on a sustained basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have hundreds of churches in our county,
We do.
but not a single church in the history of the community has ever worshiped at that level. Union Chapel has worshiped on average per week between 1,200 and 2,000 people for over 30 years. And so it puts us in a very unique category and historic category. And trying to understand how that happened is a study in itself, I suspect. I'm not sure anyone has a good grasp of it, but I do know that we have an important place in the community because of that, and a responsibility because of that. And God's been good to us and honored our efforts, and therefore our role in the community, and therefore current status as a congregation is very strong and very healthy and thriving.
Good. With so many churches facing struggling enrollments and young kids not coming to church, what do you think are some of the keys to having that thriving faith community here?
Well, there are foundational issues that I think that make a church more vital than not. One thing that I think makes a church vital is our spiritual roots, our basic understanding of who we are and why we exist. And what has happened and is happening in North America in general is that churches are losing their way. They're losing their soul, if you will. No longer embracing the Orthodox faith as once given to us through the apostles and recorded in the Gospels and the New Testament. There are growing numbers of churches and church leaders and entire denominations who question the veracity of the Scripture and the authority of God's Word. And once you question basic foundation points of your faith, then you're left with other things that become the focal point of your mission. And I think it's a mistake. As a result, North America is becoming one of the most growing mission fields in the world.
It is.
And so we see challenges in our local community, in our larger area, but we just see them as opportunity. It's an opportunity because we're not ashamed of the gospel. We believe it's the power of God unto salvation. And if you hang on to that foundation, then it has the transformative power that you would expect God to offer to individuals who embrace a meaningful faith. And I think that's why churches, one of the primary reasons why churches stay vital. They're faithful to the truth that God's given us. And so that's an important part of it. Then you have to have willing, creative, innovative, culturally sensitive, culturally relevant people who are smart and creative to package the gospel in a way that connects with people who are asking the questions that are asked in our culture right now. And it's especially true among millennials and emergent culture, raising very important questions about all of these issues. And so how can the church, in a relevant way, connect people with a timeless message? And I think we've done a pretty good job of that in the context of our own local culture. And so you have to have your foundation in place, and then you have to innovate, and you have to think of ways to connect. The Apostle Paul said that I've become all things to all people so that I might reach a few of them. So
yes.
That's his phrase.
Yes.
And that's a timeless strategy.
So keeping your pulse on your thumb on the cultural pulse and staying rooted in the Word.
Yeah. The methods can change. The message is sacred. And so you preach a timeless message in a relevant way. And it attracts. And then once people are attracted, the gospel is the power of God to transform your life. And so God is at work. And it has its effect. Yeah.
It does. It does. Aside from membership, what sort of challenges do you feel are key that the church faces, the faith chases, the community faces? What are those key challenges right now?
Well, in our local community, obviously the socioeconomic realities are really poignant.
Dire.
They're, and so all of the issues related to poverty and all the issues related to hopelessness, and so you have relational and addictive, and I just had the police chief and members of his team in my office this week, and we were talking about the opioid and heroin epidemic, and I asked them this question: How many people have overdosed in Delaware County in the last 3 months? And without hesitating, the police chief said 150. And several of those resulted in death.
Right.
And so we have this horrific challenge to try to deal with these kinds of issues. And, and then it works its way all through the system. It's affecting the school system, the tax base, the businesses,
the hospitals, the nurseries,
hospital.
the babies.
Everybody is affected by this. And of course, the faith community then has opportunity in that. How can we make a difference in the lives of people who are suffering in these kinds of ways? And so we are addressing some of those issues, and other churches are doing a great job with that as well. And so I think it matters that the faith community engage these opportunities. Yeah.
What role do you see for the church in the whole wider community? The opioid, yes. Other things. What's the church's role in that for Delaware County?
Well, it's all about the question of the least of these. Jesus said, when you have done it to the least of these, and so this becomes the parameters of our interest and our outreach. Who are the least of these? Well, these are folks who struggle, and these are the folks who are hurting, and so the opportunity in our community is that we have a lot of people who are in the down and out category. They've lost their job, they've lost their way, they've lost their hope, and it results in these behaviors that are self-destructive, oftentimes illegal, and so that's our community. Now, there are other communities, people are up and out. And people are people, and they have some of the similar kinds of personal challenges. It's just packaged in a different way. It just looks different, but people are still hurting. And so there's opportunity. And of course, there's the economic question. One of the real challenges in a community like ours is, for a nonprofit like a church, is to generate enough funds to actually run your program and maintain productive effort in these outreach needs. And so that's a big part of the job. When the recession hit in 2008, it affected churches in places like Muncie in a dramatic way. We felt it here at Union Chapel, and I know churches all over the community felt it. And the nonprofit agencies in town that do such a wonderful and courageous job ministering to people who are hurting, they suffered. And so that becomes just like everyone else who struggles for $1 to make it work. That's why the police chief was in my office this week. They need, here it's simple request, they need to secure more drug sniffing canine units to help them with their patrols. They need 2 or 3 more dogs.
Isn't that
are
about
thousands of
$10,000?
dollars,
Yeah,
$15,000
$15,000 a dog.
And so here's the police chief coming to a church saying, what ideas could you help us with, or could you even donate to this kind of project? And so everybody feels that pressure and that stress. And so those are the unique challenges that come with it. But again, those are opportunities.
They're opportunities.
To see how God might provide, because He does.
He does.
And He will.
So in the past, would they have gone to one of the corporations instead of you? Or would the church still have been the first line?
Well, that's a great question, because you think about if you're the police chief and you need, some tens of thousands of dollars, where would you go?
Right.
Well, to a church may not be your first thought.
Mm-mm.
And so, yeah, he's going to go to businesses and he's going to go to industry and he's going to ask questions of people in the community who are civic-minded and who care about such things and try to generate some funds. But how encouraging, when you think about it, how encouraging it is that he would initiate a conversation with me. I didn't call him, he called me. Knowing that here's a local church who seems to care and have some capacity to do something about it because of the demonstration of that care over the years. And so what a great thing that is. I was pleased that he called me, and I'm happy to be supportive of that initiative.
It's a tangible witness.
That's really cool, isn't it? That's really fun. That's the way it
is.
should be, right?
And that would pull people in.
Yeah.
With the change in socioeconomics, we know that Delaware County is below the median income, family income is below the national. It's below the state. It's just poor. Does this your congregation, does that affect your congregation's wallet, or does it affect their hearts towards, because you're kind of out here on the north side of town, not quite downtown, your population, how has that affected the population of your church?
Yeah, our demographic is an interesting study in itself. We have a very, very unusual cross-section of people from the community. We're very eclectic. We're racially eclectic. We're socioeconomically eclectic. So we might have a Ball State professor sitting right next to a truck driver in church, and we do. We may have a physician, sitting next to someone who's been unemployed for a while, and just barely getting enough for rent, and so it's fascinating that way. Most churches tend to be a little more homogeneous than we are here. And so somehow we have created a culture here and a style that is attractional to a cross-section of people, which is encouraging to me. I mean, that was part of the goal. How can we reach as many people as we can? Because it takes different kinds of churches to reach different kinds of people.
Absolutely.
And so if I want to cut the widest swath through the demographic of the community, how should I posture myself? And that's been part of our MO. So, and so we feel we may have a physician who's able to donate a significant amount of money per year to the life of the church, who, as it turns out, provides then a subsidy for the person they sit next to in church to be able to access our counseling center and get the kind of help that they need in their marriage or raising their kids or whatever it is, or their addiction problem. So it all works. God's serendipity makes it happen, and His Spirit percolates over those kinds of things, and being in the same place at the same time with people that you don't normally rub elbows with in the course of your week. Yeah, I think that's good. It's good for everybody. So it makes us aware of the bigger picture.
Absolutely. How is your faith community involved in the economic, social life of the community? Actually getting out of there. We've had one example.
Yeah. Well, we do a number of things. I get this question occasionally, and to summarize before I say specifically, I don't know everything that's going on through the life of our church.
Right.
My theory is if I know that everything that's going on, then there's not enough going on. So you don't have to tell me when you're up to something. We have numbers of individuals who are doing all kinds of acts of service and kindness all the time. We had a small group in our church over Christmas who asked if they could partner with the Secret Santa ministry that's been formed by another family in the church, in the community, that provides Christmas for hundreds of families in the community. Lots of people support it. It's a great thing. Well, our small group asked the question, what if we were able to purchase Bibles children's Bibles and adult Bibles for all of these families. So every family that got Christmas through the Secret Santa also got a Bible.
Okay.
What a great idea, right?
Okay.
And so independent of our budgets here in the church, they went out and they raised thousands of dollars and
Incredible.
purchased thousands of Bibles.
Incredible.
Isn't that fun? So that wasn't anything that we programmed or assigned anyone, but it was serendipity. It helped.
Part of
And
that.
it met a real need. It was great. But we do a number of things. For example, in 2 weeks, we will have our annual Community Service Day. We partner with City Hall, and we identify a neighborhood in the community that needs touching, physical help with cleanup or basic construction, that sort of thing, or even demolition. And so we will have hundreds of people in the East Central neighborhood in 2 weeks on a Saturday, and we will spend the whole day in that neighborhood touching about 25 properties. We ask people to sign up ahead of time, property owners, and it'll be a big day, and we'll have a great time, and we'll make a real difference. That neighborhood will look different when we're done touching it. And we've done that for years and years. We have an entire week in the month of June we call Serve, and we have hundreds of children and youth who are led by adults, and we will go to dozens of venues across the city, businesses, neighborhoods, agencies. And ahead of time, we will ask them, what kind of projects do you have that we can do? And we will do hundreds of things, varieties of things, just to enhance the services that are available to people in the community, and to touch their properties, and to care for people in nursing homes, and move food in food pantries. And that will go on for an entire week. And about 500 of our people will be all hands on deck for a whole week. And it matters. It's an amazing. I'd love for you to read some of the letters that we get from agencies and individuals whose lives we have helped with that. So, and we do Kids Hope. It's a program, a national program. We adopt one of the elementary schools in town, and we send mentors into the school to help mentor primarily with reading skills and some life skills, and the list goes on and on. I mean, we're doing things all the time. We have a benevolent fund here. We just from people who walk in off the street. We have a team of people who review these requests, and we distribute tens of thousands of dollars every year to individuals who just need help with their rent or their utility or whatever it is. Medical bills.
I think I saw someone come in this morning with that same request with the little one in tow. And when she came to the door, she looked despondent, and when she left, I noticed she had a smile on her face.
Yeah.
She had a little inkling of hope.
Yeah.
Are there any other additional programs? I mean, the Serve Week, is that an adaptation of the traditional Methodist Bible school?
I'm not sure where we got that idea. We didn't originate the idea. One of our staff came across it in a conference, I think. But it's the same spirit of that Sunday school culture. Get your group together and go out and do a project together, and it's all of that on steroids. It's just.
Because don't the kids come back here to sleep also? It's
yeah,
like
that's
a whole
that's
week,
an overnight.
Like a camp.
For the high schoolers, the teenagers. We send the little ones home, but it's an overnight. It's a big deal. It gets really busy around here and really stinky.
I bet.
It's a big stink fest. So we have a great time with it.
And then at the end of the week, you have a carnival?
Yeah, Party in the Parking Lot, which is a big deal. We invite the whole city to come. We will have, depending on the weather, we'll have between 2,500 and 3,500 people on our parking lot. Free food, free games, inflatables, The band will be playing. We'll have BMX guys doing flips off their ramps, and it's a hoot. It's just a great thing. And
Big grills going with hot dogs and hamburgers
and so it's a party. And we celebrate Serve Week because it's fun to serve. It's a blessing. The old adage, it's more blessed to give than receive. That's actually true. So people say, you folks are great. You folks are so generous. You serve so well, and it's just such an amazing thing that you do. And what they don't understand is that the blessing is actually ours. We're actually selfish that way. We've discovered the more we serve, the happier we are, and the more blessed we are, and the more content we are. And so it's all selfishness, getting out there and serving.
In a twisted sort of way.
Yeah.
So do you have any additional programs in the works?
And
who are leading
that's
those?
a great question. There are things going on. Our youth ministry is thinking of new outreach and mission opportunities that will take them to places in the community and outside of the community. We love to expose young people to service and young people to mission opportunities, because most of us grow up and we have a pretty confined perspective. One of our sons is raising 2 daughters, and his daughters are 2 little rich kids. So they live in an affluent suburb in Indianapolis, and so they're a couple of little rich kids. And so my admonition to my son and daughter-in-law is, you need to expose these girls to people who are different than you are, because it will help them. And what happens is, when you expose someone to other cultures, it rocks their world.
It does.
And expands their worldview.
No matter what age they are.
Exactly.
But it's easier as they're small. I hear you.
And as adults, I think folks ought to get out of the country and get exposed to other cultures in the world, because it'll change the way you go through the world dramatically.
It will. We were just talking about going someplace where we had to purse our lips to keep the water from going in because we would be sick. That's hard to fathom when we get up in our mornings here.
Exactly. I mean, in Indiana, if your world can become go to work, come home, go to high school basketball games, have an occasional cookout with your family in the backyard, and you don't see anything else. You go to church once in a while, and life is compartmentalized, and it's packaged up nice and neat where I feel comfortable and safe. There's a big world out there.
There is.
This weekend I'm preaching on what would Jesus do with the refugees. How would Jesus treat refugees? And that's a pertinent question.
It is.
But that's a global question.
It's a global
So
question.
I want to expose our congregation to the idea that there are 60 million displaced people in the world right now. And there's a bigger question than a political one or a nationalistic one. There's a biblical question that should be asked for Christian people to consider. And so just expanding people's understanding of the world, their worldview, is an important component, I think, of the work of the church.
Getting us out of our cocoons.
Out of the comfort.
What do you think about, we started the conversation with the opioid issue. Is there something that the church is doing already, or is that still in the cooking stages?
Well, we have individuals in our church who participate in ministries in the community, in the area, who are supportive in nature. So it's recovery groups, support groups for people struggling with addiction and families struggling. Our counseling center has an expert or two in addiction specialties. And they also, from time to time, we will do recovery groups of our own here. We've had, for example, gambling addiction support groups. And this usually comes from people who have struggled with and have overcome these addictions or living with these addictions. And we call on these people then to use their own journey, their own stories to influence people who need the same kind of recovery process that they've enjoyed.
How do you find those people who need this? How do
They
you find, how do they
emerge.
find you?
They emerge, and we talk out loud about it, and so they will surface.
Are they resistant to a faith-based recovery group?
Well, almost never when we cultivate them out of our congregation. Obviously, they've
Right.
got that orientation
They're here.
already, and we wouldn't be interested in any kind of program that didn't include the spiritual part of
Right.
it. So,
Just didn't know how you bridge that gap for those who
Yeah.
are resistant.
yeah, but it's one of those challenges that we constantly have on the table because there isn't a very significant period that goes by when we don't have someone in our office or in our counseling center or speaking to us around the worship services, telling us a terrible story about a family member or a friend. You know,
It
right
touches
now I
everyone.
can visualize a mother in tears standing in front of me after a service. My son is,
Yes.
and a dad who I can see him now just imploring me to think about doing more because my son is a heroin addict and he was a good boy and he, was in all the
Right.
sports and he went to college and he just got caught and now he's in trouble and what can we do?
And that
It's a huge
crosses all
challenge.
socioeconomic
It does.
levels. That is not a specific
does.
target.
Yeah.
So what other churches or organizations do you work with on programs?
Well, of course, we have a network with other United Methodist churches within our denomination, and we partner in various ways with them. But I have good friendships. Being in the community this long, I have a lot of friends who are in pastoral ministry and lead churches here, and so we have a number of different initiatives that we do. I love to partner with other ministries, other churches. I just think there's lots of strength in partnership when it's done well, and so we've engaged in everything from community-wide service projects, to, worship service projects, to planting new churches here and there in partnership with other
Right.
churches. Our Serve Week, which I mentioned, with all these hundreds of people going out for the whole week, we've had churches partner with us during our Serve Week in the past, and that's been a gratifying kind of thing. They'll send members of their youth group over and just get in the mix, and
Right.
we do it together. We're currently partnering with one of the churches here in town to plant a new church in Anderson next year.
Okay.
So things like that. We
What
like
are
to
some of
do.
those organizations that you're partnering with?
Well, of course,
What other churches?
the other
what
churches.
organizations?
Center Chapel United Methodist Church,
Okay.
we do with them. Glad Tidings, we do some projects together from time to time. Destiny Christian Church, with which is a biracial church here in town. That's the church we're partnering to do this church plant with.
Awesome.
And we'll take all comers. We're not. We don't care what their label is. A partnership for us is based first on friendship. Do we know each other? Trust each other? Second, do we share vision and values? And if we have the same value base, then let's find a project to do together. So if we trust each other, we know each other, we have the same vision and values, then let's find a way to engage a meaningful project.
Is there a collaboration in Muncie where the churches have an opportunity to meet one and all and talk and get to know each other?
There are a couple of ministerial associations that percolate right now. Having been here for 37 years, I've actually seen those things kind of come and go.
Come and go.
They get strong for a while, and then there's transition and people leave, and so some of the leadership is lost, and so it's hot and cold with that sort of thing.
So that grows with people rather than need?
Yes, it's more about relationship than it is about a desire to tackle a certain challenge in the community. At least that's been my experience. There's not. This is one of the more difficult realities of religious culture. It's in one sense disappointing, in another sense perfectly understandable, that people tend to segregate themselves in their religious communities based on their traditions or their particular doctrinal distinction or other patterns.
Their ancestral heritage.
Yeah, and so people can't see outside of their particular culture. You know, someone makes the derogatory comment that Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in the country, and you know, shoot, that's probably right.
It is.
You know, dang it. So you have to work at that, and I'm very happy to say that I have really intentionally cultivated relationships with as many clergy in the community as I can over the years. And something I'm very proud, maybe the most proud honor that I've ever received is that I'm the only Caucasian who's ever been invited to keynote the Martin Luther King worship celebration in Muncie, Indiana.
At Christ Temple?
Yes.
Yes.
It's an annual worship
It is.
experience. It is a great
I've
tradition.
been to it. It is a great tradition.
It's a great opportunity to be exposed to the black church and the black culture and
It's
the way
an
they
awesome
worship.
community.
It's a party,
It's a party.
and I'm the only white guy. Years ago, they asked me in the service outline for that particular service, there is a part called the occasion. So you know, you have singing and prayers and introductions and a sermon and that sort of thing. But right embedded in there is the occasion, and the occasion is when another clergy is invited to stand up and just talk about the virtues of Dr. Martin Luther King, and to remind people why we are assembled in his memory and his honor, and the values he stood for. So the occasion. And I was invited one year to do the occasion.
The occasion.
And something funny crossed my mind, and I thought, and it was risky for me to say this, but I stood up and I said, I appreciate you inviting me to do the occasion, but when Pastor Jackson called me to ask if I would do this, I thought he said, would you be the old Caucasian? And so I threw it out there, and it was risky.
It was risky.
But people laughed.
But they
And
laughed.
And so I got away with it. It was fine.
So it sounds like my next question would venture into the role of the church and the faith communities in cultivating a sense of citizenship. And so you've kind of addressed that. Is there a connection between faith and citizenship?
I hope
Discipleship versus evangelism.
Well, being civic-minded, I think, is a Christian virtue. It's central to the whole purpose. Jesus said there are people who are hungry, they're thirsty, they're naked, they're in prison, they're all around you, they're the poor, they're all around you. And so there's your mission. There's your mission field. I think the two most iconic Christian persons who have lived in my lifetime embody well the kind of virtues and perspective that we should have as Christians. One is Dr. Billy Graham, who is still living and has preached the gospel to millions of people face to face and all over the world. And that's the evangelism part. The gospel is the power of God for salvation, and someone should preach it. And so here's an iconic figure who has been more than just an evangelist, but he's been the country's pastor, the pastor to presidents and so forth. So his influence is from that perspective, and I think it's profound. The other person who I think is the most iconic Christian in my lifetime is Mother Teresa.
She was my daughter's idol.
She's lots of people's idol, as she should be. And there's a term in the Roman Catholic tradition called genuflect, which is what
Yep.
which is the physical act of humility in the Mass, as you enter the Mass. And it was a fascinating observation for me when Mother Teresa was ailing and near her death, and papers and news reports all over the world, Mother Teresa is sick. And everyone stopped. Everyone stopped.
Everyone stopped.
When Mother Teresa passed, the whole world genuflected. Because anybody, as it turns out, in the world can recognize Christianity when they see it. And there it was.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. You have do you still partner with Kazakhstan?
Yes.
So that's a mission outside the country, a different kind of attention to citizenship, global citizenship. I'm sure that's also because it's a ministry, but getting back to giving is better than receiving. How does this affect your community, and why do you put that effort forward for people so far away? And you might describe a little bit of what that service is, because I know what that program is, but
Well, this is a result of our mission philosophy. You know, Jesus gave us two really big ideas. The first one was love your neighbor, love God with all of your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Boom.
It's the big commandment.
boom.
Love God, love your neighbor. When in doubt, refer to this rule. Love God,
Love
your neighbor. How are you doing with that? And if your life is confused, if you're disoriented, you're at the cross, you're not sure what to do, if you'll love God and love your neighbor, I promise it'll sort out for you. If you'll keep that front and center. Then there was a great commission. There's a great commandment, love God, love your neighbor. And then there's a great commission. There's just two big ones. And the great commission is from Jesus when he said, go into all the world, preach the gospel. Make disciples. It's a big mandate. And so it's incumbent upon people of the faith to ask the question, what is God doing? Where is he doing it? Who's yet to be reached? How can I be involved? And so with that basic framework, years ago, over 20 years ago now, we asked the question, and this came in the context of the implosion, 1989-90, the implosion of the Soviet Union, and these new republics were forming in the former southern regions of the Soviet. And Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkestan, all these new stans were forming traditionally Muslim cultures, and a door of opportunity was there. The Apostle Paul said it, it's recorded in the book of Acts, I've always had an ambition to preach the gospel where it's never been heard. And so we had that ambition as well. What is God doing? Where is he doing it? Who is yet reached? How can we be involved? So we did some exploratory trips. I went around the world myself, just asking God, where is a people yet to be reached that we might be able to engage? And the short of it is we saw Kazakhstan, Central Asia, Southern Central Asia, as a place like that. We found the people there warm and friendly and hospitable, traditionally Muslim, and so we settled. We sent 10 of our own parishioners to live full-time in Kazakhstan 20 years ago, and that has developed into an amazing network of relationships. At one point we owned 2 different development centers in 2 different cities in Kazakhstan, doing humanitarian aid activities, small business loans, medical conferencing. We've just given one of those buildings away to to a medical doctor from the States who is opening a medical clinic in
Incredible.
the city of Taraz, Kazakhstan. So we've had over 400 of our congregants travel to Kazakhstan to live there full term or just short range initiatives. One of our members here, one of our leaders, has been in Kazakhstan 39 times. He's traveled there 39 times.
Oh my gosh.
We're thinking about, like building a statue and setting it out in the front yard or something. It's remarkable because Kazakhstan, you can't get there from here. It is in the middle of nowhere. This is the plains of Central Asia. This is the land of Genghis Khan. It's along the ancient Silk Road that
Really?
went from Eastern Europe, the Mediterranean, to China. It is out there. It is exactly on the opposite side of the planet. It takes forever to get there. It's a hard place just to get to, let alone. And so we got one guy who's been there 39 times. Yeah.
He spent more time in the plains than he has on the ground.
He's familiar with the process of airport negotiation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you'd wish to add?
Well,
Communities, faith, where Union Chapel fits in Muncie.
in the context of this particular study, the Middletown study, I think
I'm not sure that I asked if, because you've been here long enough, that when the big corporations vacated, as time has changed and there's less need for motorized equipment, et cetera, what did that do to Union Chapel as those corporations left? What did it do to Union Chapel? What did it do to Union Chapel's need to reach into the community? And then we'll go to the final comments.
Yeah, well, it impacted the local church just like it did the whole community. I mean, we all felt it, and it wasn't just the tangible, practical deficits that it left in tax base and income, but it also affected our psyche, in my opinion. It affected the way we think about ourselves, and in general, it's challenging for people in our community to be optimistic, to be hopeful, to feel good about our community. Now, there are bright spots, and there are always bright spots around. Individuals and companies and schools, that perform and achieve. And so there's always lights on around. But the great challenge is for us to maintain an optimistic and hopeful attitude about who we are and what we can do if we do it together, and trust God to do it. And so rather than challenges, I like to use the word opportunity. And it's right to do that. In my worldview, the kingdom of God is primary. The rule and reign of God in the world. I believe Jesus is Lord. He's the King of Kings. And in the context of my belief in that truth, it changes the way I see the world, and therefore my community. And so the phrase I like to use is, the best is yet to come. For people who put their hope and trust in God, the best is yet to come. It doesn't matter how good it may be or how bad it may be, it's going to get better. The best is yet to come. Now that's a hopeful thing, right?
That's a hopeful thing.
And not only is it just a hopeful little phrase, it's actually true.
You've seen it happen.
You can hang on to that because it's true. It's the truth. And that'll change the way you go through the world if you really hang on to that. And it'll change the way you deal with challenges in the community and setbacks and the pain, how you deal with it. And so if you keep your confidence in God in place and know that He is constantly at work for good through us and in us, then you can maintain the right kind of posture to make a difference. And that's a great challenge, I think, in our community at large. And so we just want to turn the light on, keep it as bright as we can. We want to be one of those lights that give hope to people in a difficult time.
It's an excellent message.
Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to add?
Not really. It's a pleasure to get to sit and talk about these things a little bit and reminisce. And I've been a Hoosier my whole life, but I've been in Muncie, Delaware County now for 37 years. So this is home to us.
Yes.
We raised our children here, and we bought funeral plots here, and so we're all in.
You're all in.
Yeah, and I think that's what it takes. You have to invest your life. If you're always looking for something else or looking somewhere else, you can't be everything God wants you to be right now. And right now is really all we have.
True.
And so,
True.
thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much.
Blessings.